you've spent 10 hours digging a trench until your hands are just bleeding, your muscles are screaming, and you finally drop this heavy, splintered shovel into the dirt. You're completely exhausted.
It's absolutely dead on your feet.
Right. And you've measured your success entirely by how much physical earth you've managed to move out of the way. But then somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, the real reality-altering work, yeah, it hasn't even started yet.
Because you haven't picked up a pen.
Exactly, because you haven't picked up a pen. Welcome to this custom deep dive. Today we're exploring this really fascinating excerpt from a text called Mastering the Art of Making Things Happen. And our mission today is to decode the actual mechanics of making things happen.
Yeah, and we're moving way past the usual, cliche self-help advice here.
Way past it. We're looking specifically at a turning point in this audit. It's pages 11 and 12 titled Rewriting the Script. And what's wild is that it treats the human mind not as some mystical, cloudy realm, but as a rigid, highly reprogrammable machine.
It really does. It takes everything we assume about labor and achievement and just shifts it entirely from the physical world into the cognitive one.
Which is a huge leap for most people.
It is. The underlying premise of this section is that the physical work, the metaphorical digging of the trench we just talked about, is just the preliminary step. I mean, the soil is excavated, sure, but the structure hasn't been built. The source insists that the real structural work of reality is done with the pen.
Meaning the explicit rewriting of your internal operating system.
Exactly.
I have to admit, though, when I first read the words affirmations and, visualization in the source material, my immediate instinct was just relatable skepticism, like full eye roll.
Oh, sure, I think everyone does that.
Right, because you hear those words and you instantly picture someone staring into a bathroom mirror repeating, I am a tiger, while internally they're feeling like a completely terrified mouse. It just feels flimsy.
It feels like wishful thinking.
Yeah, exactly. But what really stands out in this text is that it treats affirmations completely differently. It strips away the wishful thinking entirely and treats them as hard-coded new system commands.
Yeah, and to understand why standard affirmations usually fail for people, we kind of have to look at how this source redefines the inner monologue itself. If you're just standing in front of a mirror making wishes, you're essentially pleading with reality.
Like asking for a handout.
Right. You're asking an external force for a favor. But the text insists we aren't wishing. We are literally reprogramming software. Because, you have this constant low-level whisper of, I can't, running in the background of your mind.
Oh, constantly. For everyone.
And it functions like a malware program. It's just quietly eating up all your processing power, dictating your limitations before you even attempt an action.
So we aren't standing outside the machine hoping it dispenses a prize. We are inside the terminal, rewriting the code.
Exactly. You are the programmer.
I mean, if I compare the standard view of affirmations to what this source is suggesting, it's like the standard view is like sticking a brightly colored Post-it note on the outside of your computer monitor.
Right. Yeah.
And it says, work faster, please. While the computer itself is just riddled with viruses.
That's a great analogy. The Post-it note does absolutely nothing to the actual operating system. You could write 100 Post-it notes.
And it's still going to crash.
Right. The source tells you to act like a hacker. You have to open the root directory and actively overwrite that corrupted I can't code with high-pressure directives. You have to replace it with the definitive command, I am.
Okay, but let me push back on that a little bit, because if we're just hackers typing I am into our brain, how does that actually change our external reality?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, typing a command into a mental terminal doesn't suddenly deposit, $10,000 into a checking account. It doesn't materialize a new career opportunity out of thin air. There's this massive disconnect there between internal software and external hardware.
Okay, yes, and that disconnect is exactly what the text addresses next. It introduces a really fascinating concept to sort of bridge the gap between internal code and external reality.
Okay. What is it?
It's a specific fundamental file in your system called the subconscious ledger.
The subconscious ledger.
Right. It operates as the ultimate record keeper of your identity. And according to this framework, the universe, or, the external world, the economy, your social circle interacts with you based entirely on what is written in this specific ledger.
So if I'm thinking about this like a database, there has to be a specific line of code or a file we're targeting to make this change, right? Like I imagine the ledger contains our core identity markers.
It does,
Yeah.
and the text uses a really stark contrast to illustrate these markers. It contrasts a tenant with an owner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. If your deep, hard-coded identity in this ledger says that you are a tenant in this life, the external world will treat you exactly like a tenant.
Huh. You know, if I'm a tenant in my own life, I imagine I'm constantly living in a state of conditionality. Like a tenant is always waiting for the landlord to fix their problems.
Exactly.
And that landlord could be a boss or the economy or even a partner. They live with this underlying anxiety that, their lease might not be renewed, the rug could be pulled out from under them at any moment.
And because of that fear, what happens? They don't invest.
Right. They don't invest deeply in the property. They don't take risks because they don't own it.
Exactly. You're broadcasting a frequency of permission-seeking and impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
And the situations, the opportunities, the dynamics you naturally gravitate toward are going to mirror that impermanence.
So you just attract more landlord-tenant dynamics.
Right. You will constantly find yourself in situations where you lack control.
Right.
Simply because your internal ledger dictates that you shouldn't have control.
Yeah.
So to change your reality, the text argues you must explicitly strike out tenant and write in owner.
Okay, and I'm asking this for the listener here, isn't this just lying to yourself? Seriously, if my actual literal bank account says I have $50 to my name and my career is completely stalled, crossing out tenant and writing owner in some invisible mental ledger feels like I'm just living in denial. I mean, the bank account still says $50.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And the source anticipates this exact resistance. It makes a really important distinction between ignoring reality and changing your operating reality.
Okay, what's the difference?
You're shifting the genre of your life story. You're moving away from a tragedy of lack, where you are the victim of your circumstances, to what the text calls an epic of sovereign achievement.
Sovereign achievement. I like that, but I need a concrete example here. I can call myself a sovereign achiever all day long, but when the rent is due, how does that internal lie become an external truth? Like, how does this ledger update translate to the physical world?
Okay, let's look at the micro behaviors. Imagine you're drafting an email to ask for a raise.
Okay, dreaded email.
Right. A person operating with tenant code writes an email full of qualifiers. They write things like, I was hoping we could discuss my compensation, or if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to review my salary.
Oh, yeah. The tone is super apologetic. The posture is just submissive.
Exactly. And the boss reads it and subconsciously registers a person who is asking for a favor, someone who is, frankly, easily dismissed.
Right.
Now imagine an owner drafts that exact same email. They don't ask for a favor. They outline their value as a business proposition. They might write, based on the deliverables over the last 2 quarters, here is the updated compensation structure we need to implement.
Wow. Yeah, that's entirely different.
The physical world responds differently because the physical input, the tone, the posture, the negotiation tactic completely changed. The internal script altered the external action, which then altered the reality.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So changing the ledger from tenant to owner strips away all those apologetic qualifiers from our behavior. Like, an owner doesn't wait for the landlord to fix the roof. They just buy the materials and fix it themselves.
Exactly. They operate with authority.
And the world eventually bends to accommodate that authority. But, and here's my next question, a ledger is still just a static document, right? A line of code sitting on a hard drive doesn't execute itself. There has to be a mechanism that actually saves the update and forces the machine to run the program.
You need a power source. You're absolutely right. You can have the most flawlessly written software in the world, but if the computer isn't plugged in, the screen stays black.
Right.
The audit provides a highly mechanical instruction on page 12 to power these new system commands. It says, you must feel the emotion.
Feel the emotion.
Yes, and emotion is described here not as some, fleeting human sentiment, but as the hydraulic fluid of this entire system.
Hydraulic fluid. Oh, wow, that makes perfect sense, because heavy machinery, like an excavator or a bulldozer, it doesn't lift tons of steel and dirt with just electricity or basic gears. They use fluid under immense calculated pressure.
Exactly. Emotion is the pressure. The text states that an affirmation without feeling is like a pipe without water. It is just hollow metal.
Hollow metal. I love that metaphor.
It's great, right? The intention, the actual words you speak, form the pipe.
Oh,
But the emotion is the fluid that actually does the heavy lifting of reality creation.
that perfectly explains the trap so many people fall into with positive thinking. Like, think about a morning commute.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's gripping the steering wheel, stuck in terrible traffic, and they're mindlessly repeating, I am successful, I am wealthy, I am confident.
Just chanting it.
Right. But internally, like in the pit of their stomach, they are feeling pure anxiety about a meeting they have in 20 minutes.
Yes. The pipe they are building says success, but the hydraulic fluid they are actively pumping through it is anxiety and impending doom.
And the system doesn't read the hollow words, does it? It reads the pressure of the fluid.
Exactly. You're just clanking hollow metal pipes together and wondering why the building isn't going up. The subconscious machine only responds to the emotional resonance.
Which is tough.
It is. The source actually gives a very stark instruction to illustrate this requirement. It states that you must feel the actual weight of the gold coin in your hand before it physically manifests in your life.
See, but this is the massive paradox. This is the mental gymnastics the source is asking us to perform. Because how on earth do you generate the genuine feeling of holding a heavy gold coin when you look down and your hands are currently undeniably totally empty?
It's the hardest part.
We are just so conditioned to be reactive. You know, we wait for the external environment to hand us a stimulus, like getting a paycheck, and then we react with the emotion of relief or joy. We literally need the coin to trigger the emotion.
But the source is demanding that we become proactive rather than reactive. We have to generate the stimulus internally before the environment provides it.
Which sounds impossible.
It sounds impossible, but to solve this paradox of feeling something you don't yet have, the text offers this masterclass in perspective through a simple analogy: the builder.
The builder. Okay, lay it on me.
Think about a master builder constructing a house. At the very beginning of the project, they are just pouring a concrete foundation into the dirt, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a messy gray sludge.
Right.
It doesn't look like a house, doesn't offer any shelter. If a random passerby walked past it, they would just see a muddy hole in the ground.
You probably think it looks like a disaster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the builder doesn't look at that wet concrete and feel despair because it's not a house yet. They don't suffer a crisis of faith over a muddy hole. Why? Because they possess the blueprint.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They understand the sequence of cause and effect.
Well,
And because of that knowledge, they can see the finished structure in their mind perfectly while they're still just pouring the foundation. They feel the reality of the completed house in the present moment, entirely unbothered by the current dirt. The text calls this state of mind presumptive ownership.
presumptive ownership. Wow. So you are presuming the end result is already a hard fact, even while you're doing the messy preliminary work. The external reality hasn't caught up to the blueprint yet, but your internal ledger has already registered the house as completed.
Yes. The ultimate goal, the source explains, is to systematically eliminate hoping for a future event to happen and to replace it entirely with acknowledging a current vibrational fact.
Hold on. Vibrational fact sounds a bit like the pop psychology mysticism we promised to avoid at the beginning of this deep dive.
Fair point.
In the context of our computer code metaphor, are we just talking about an undeniable data point in the system?
Exactly. We are talking about a data point that has been saved to the root directory. When the text uses the term vibrational fact, it doesn't mean magic. It means an emotional state that is so consistent and so unwavering that your brain processes it as current reality, regardless of what your eyes are seeing. It is an internal certainty.
Let's unpack the tectonic difference between those two approaches because it's huge. Hoping versus acknowledging. Think about how it physically feels in your body when you say, I hope this project works out, or I hope I get this job.
It's tense.
It's filled with tension. Hoping inherently implies doubt and powerlessness. It's like you're tossing a coin into a wishing well, crossing your fingers, and waiting for some external judge to hand down a verdict.
You are operating as a tenant. You're waiting for the landlord's permission.
Exactly. But acknowledging, when you acknowledge something, you are simply confirming that it exists. Like you acknowledge that the sun will rise. You acknowledge that gravity will hold you to the ground. There is no doubt, no crossed fingers. It implies inevitability and total authority over the environment. You aren't asking the universe for a favor anymore. You are confirming a fact.
You are stating a system command. And bringing this back to the hacker and the subconscious ledger, you aren't hoping the ledger updates. You are acknowledging the new code you just wrote. You are running the program.
And because you're acknowledging it as a fact, the emotion, that crucial hydraulic fluid, it just flows naturally without force.
Exactly. You don't have to artificially manufacture the feeling of the gold coin in your hand if you inherently know the coin is already yours. You're simply waiting for the physical delivery truck to arrive. The builder doesn't stress about whether the concrete will eventually become a house. They just keep laying the bricks.
This just completely shifts goal setting out of the realm of anxiety and drops it firmly into the realm of absolute certainty. It removes all the desperation. If you know the package is in the mail, you don't stand by the window chewing your fingernails, right?
No, you just go about your day knowing it will arrive.
Right. And this brings all these abstract mechanics directly into the immediate life of you, the listener, right now.
Because the source material is highly practical. It doesn't leave the reader with just abstract philosophy. At the conclusion of this section in the audit, it actually assigns specific homework based on these mechanics.
Oh, right. Page 12.
Yep. It says, write your new script, don't ask for permission, state your claim.
Don't ask for permission. I mean, that is the absolute core of the owner mindset. A tenant asks for permission to paint the living room walls. An owner just goes to the hardware store, buys the paint, and starts rolling.
Exactly. Stating your claim means defining your exact terms of engagement with the world. It means deciding what your boundaries are, what your value is, and writing that into the subconscious ledger as a non-negotiable fact.
Which requires you to really examine your own internal pipes right now, because whether you realize it or not, your mental pipes are carrying something. They are never empty.
No, never. You are running a script every single second of the day, broadcasting a set of instructions to the external world.
So you have to audit your own system. You have to ask yourself, are you currently operating with tenant code? Are you tiptoeing around your own life, waiting for someone else to validate your worth?
Or are you running owner code? Are you actively writing your name on the deed in your subconscious ledger and making decisions from a place of presumptive ownership?
The physical work of digging the trench is straightforward, sure. But the cognitive work of holding that posture of ownership, especially when the external world hasn't physically manifested the results yet, that is the actual labor of making things happen.
It's the hardest work there is.
It really is the heaviest lifting we can possibly do. And, as we wrap up this deep dive into the mechanics of rewriting the script, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over.
It's a big one.
It is. We've talked extensively today about how the source insists we must feel the weight of the gold coin to power this system, right? Because emotion is the hydraulic fluid that turns abstract thoughts into solid reality.
Right.
But the subconscious machine doesn't judge the quality of the emotion. It simply uses whatever fluid you pump into it as fuel to execute the commands.
It is a totally neutral engine. It operates purely on the pressure provided.
So if that is an absolute mechanical rule of the human operating system,
Right.
what happens to our reality if we are unconsciously running the hydraulic fluid of anxiety, stress, and fear through those exact same pipes every single day?
That's the terrifying part.
It is. If the machine just uses whatever fluid we give it, are we, through our constant worrying and, visualizing of worst-case scenarios, accidentally building a rock-solid foundation for a house we don't even want to live in? Are we picking up that heavy splintered shovel we talked about at the very beginning and using all our strength, all our emotional hydraulic pressure to dig our own trench deeper and deeper?
The physical work might be done, but the pen in your hand is always writing.
Always. The only question left is, what script are you forcing the universe to read?